See.
Pat's going first.
No, Alecia.
I like how everyone takes up the drums. We all gotta take a different instrument.
I don't know what to do. Saxophone. Lead singer.
This is like, I can't believe this theme song just came with the software.
Shocker.
Wow.
It's like a solid little rock.
It's fine.
Yeah.
They stole it. Someone will come after you eventually.
Hey, we're underway.
Yes, we're jamming. Welcome back. It's
Welcome.
good to see you all again.
It's good to
Welcome.
see you.
Welcome to everyone. We have a small panel today. There are 4 of us, but hopefully
Small
we can.
and mighty.
Yes.
Foremost awesome and attractive, so I feel like.
Also, Pat sounds so nice.
It's a new mic.
Golly, that
New
sounds so
setup.
smooth, so
I'm
velvety.
so sad
It was
about the mic that I bought now.
$100. I've invested real cash towards my career as a podcaster.
Same.
That's good.
I
Like
might. You sound really good though. I might want the link to that mic.
All right. Actually, it's the same mic. It's a different holder.
That's right.
Okay.
So-
New holder. It's all in the windscreen, is what I've always said. Okay. Well, so what, Andres? What do you want to talk about today?
So this is my topic.
different-
I got to choose this time. And I wanted to hear, because one of the most iconic things about sales school when we were in Southwestern was Lee McCroskey's, our very own Lee McCroskey's story, the dirt pile story. I mean, that was like the one that really got you through most of the dark forests and deep bottoms of the book field. So we're like, if Lee could do it in it wasn't Corduroy, what was it? It was in velour.
Velour.
If Lee could do it in velour, I could do it in
A
these
velour
nice shorts and
outfit
polo.
in Malone, New York. Yeah, that's a double.
Wait,
Malone
you were
and
in
Malone.
Velour? How did I miss that all these years?
Yeah.
I need to listen to that story.
It's
Okay.
iconic.
Take it from the top.
Actually, and if you guys want to hear what that story was, actually, the Ponytails podcast episode with Lee McCroskey, the second one, the most recent one, actually has the dirt pile story in a little bit more detail. And Lee brought up the map of where it was in Malone that this dirt pile was.
Yeah,
So
I
we
still
could
have
go
the
to
map. I showed it. And if you want to hear the original dirt pile, it's available on my YouTube channel. I don't have many videos posted, but there are 6 or 7 on there.
In
One
fact-
of them, the dirt pile. Okay.
He's got a YouTube channel? This is like,
No.
I'm learning all kinds of stuff today.
I put it up when I was searching for other options to work so people could see. Because whenever you did something, they always say, well, we'd like to see you teaching. So I put it up.
That's true.
to.
By the way,
I'll put the link to that video on the description too.
I have to tag in that my first summer, and I have Andres, another one might be fun if we had people tell their dirt pile stories from the book field. But my first summer, I had a dirt pile moment, and it was actually on a dock in North Carolina. And I remembered the whole dirt pile thing, and I remembered Lee saying, you take 10 minutes. So like I trudged out of my truck out to the end of the dock, and I sat down. Then I realized I didn't have Kleenex, so I went back and I got the Kleenex. And then I sat down and I looked at my watch, and I was like, 10 minutes. And then at the end of 10 minutes, I got up and went back and finished my summer because Lee told me to. It's genius.
Beautiful. You are so coachable.
So for those of you who are like, what the hell? I listened to these because they're not about the book field. What is a dirt pile story?
That's not why you listen.
What is a dirt pile story? A dirt pile story is basically, long story short, a hard moment where Murphy's Law seems to be your name law, where if it can go wrong, it did go wrong. Truly. And so therefore you are at the place where, you can't keep going. You can't, but it's like impossible and you're refusing to go back. So what are you going to do? And wherever the inspiration comes from. So that's kind of what the dirt pile story is all about. Keeps you going, keeps you motivated. And man, it's go check it out. Actually, go listen to Lee's story and then come back to this. It's that good. It's that good.
Yeah. I started that in 1990. After it had ended, but I sat down and I was doing these team meetings in the Mort Utley conference room. So everybody that had a big team would bring their team into the conference room, and I would sit down and meet with them. And one of the elements of that story was, proper mental attitude toward problems, being tough-minded. So I just shared that story, and one day Dan sat in to hear it. He goes, "You know what? You should probably tell that in sales school," because it was a shorter version. So I took
it got longer every year.
Yeah, it wasn't because I made up stuff. I just embellished it and added brush strokes and the canvas to it versus just like, "I had a hard day. You should keep working." That was the original one.
It's called great storytelling.
Anyway, so good. I love the history, and now we got the full context of the dirt pile story. So now with that, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna tell the dirt pile story of our lives since Southwestern, and how we overcame them, and what we did to how we grew from them, or anything else that might come from the inspiration. Obviously, it's always loose depending on how you want to interpret the topic, but that's kind of what we'll be talking about today. So, is anybody dying to go first? Is anybody like, oh man, I got to tell this story? Here we go. Alecia Huck with MAVERICK Company.
How long are we taking on these to know how much color to put into them?
Oh, Lord.
Okay, so we have about 45 minutes left in the recording, so about like 10 to 11 minutes.
All right, fine.
On average, if possible.
Alecia, are you ready?
There'll be follow-up questions and stuff, so just,
Yes. It's all you, Pat. I can almost guess what Pat's is. I think I know his dirt pile story. I'm very excited.
Probably. I've told it before. I can go ahead and I'll take the first slot, and I'll try to keep it to 10 minutes. Okay, so when I was leaving Southwestern Advantage, it was really, truly driven by the idea that I had 3 young kids and I didn't want to be on the road because the organization was in good shape and everything. But I was like, I got to be at home. And that job wasn't, at that time, it wasn't really very compatible. So made a tough decision and resigned. And in my final interview with Henry Bedford, he said, "Hey, would you want to start a real estate company?" And at that time, I had invested in some real estate, and this was again 2006. So 2005, 2006. So the real estate market had been booming for a number of years. And what I didn't realize, and what Henry didn't realize, and nobody really who's average understood, is that the market was about to crash. He asked me to do that in part because he knew I invested in various real estate investments, and a lot of it was with other guys that I sold books with. So heavily leveraged, you could say. In other words, I took out a line of credit on my house for a couple $100,000 and used that to purchase property, which was making money for a little while. And then all of a sudden I, decided, hey, I'm going to leave. I get offered that spot. I said, I don't think so. That's not really what I want to do in real estate, but I'll think about it. And then I left. And as shortly after that, as I started to flip houses, and I made a little bit of money on my first house, and then I made literally $5,000 on my second house. And then my third house became a short sale, which is not a foreclosure, but it's a distress situation. You could see the market was turning away. About during that time, I also had partners in those real estate investments who were coming up bankrupt, and person after person. And when that happens, whoever's left gets the whole property to themselves. And that was me. But unfortunately, these properties were not in good shape. They were in states that aren't even close to me. I didn't have anybody to look after them. And so there wasn't any income coming from these properties. So I started using whatever I had, because in my brain, I was thinking a foreclosure is like the worst thing that can happen to your credit, because it messes you up for 7 years. So I started to use whatever good money I had to throw after these bad properties, just being stupid, And as I was running out of money, I was like, man, I'm going to need some income here, and flipping houses isn't going to do it. I should really reconsider that offer that Henry made. So that is kind of really what drove me back into the conversation with Henry. And thankfully, he was just as excited about it a year later as he was when he first proposed it to me. And he knew we were both going to have to learn the industry or whatever. But I then had to tell him, like, here's what I'm up against. And when your finances get bad enough, one of the things that was common during the recession was that people would restructure their mortgages. So you could appeal to the bank and say, hey, I can't keep up with this, and I've got all this other financial hardship. So can we restructure this into like a temporary low interest rate, and let's work with me, and then we can whatever. So I didn't know how to do that. There was a company that said they could help me with it. And they said, well, the first thing you have to do to get the bank to listen is you have to stop paying your mortgage. And I'm like, well, that sounds kind of scary. And they're like, yeah, but it's the only way they'll listen to you. We do this all the time. We do it all the time. And so I'm like, okay, Jenny, I guess we have to stop paying our mortgage. And then we start getting notices from the bank, hey, you're behind or whatever. And we're like, yeah, we're trying to restructure our mortgage. And they're like, fill out this application. It'll be fine. And then we can see if we can help you. And then they responded, oh, your investor, the person who is the investor on your mortgage, doesn't participate in these. And I'm like, that seems like a problem. The company said, oh, just reapply, just reapply. Eventually, they're going to fall in line. And because so many people were filing foreclosure, the banks said, if you are in a restructuring process, we will not foreclose on your property. So I kept reapplying for basically 5 years, where my house was in foreclosure the entire time. And which is also interesting because now I'm working as a realtor, helping people buy and sell property. And every listing appointment I go on, I have to tell people what their house is now worth, which is much less than it may have been a couple of years before. I'm doing presentations to people that are literally crying in front of me as I tell them, here's what's going on and here's what your house is worth. And I'm watching them beat themselves up like, I'm so stupid. I should have sold this years ago, and just like berating themselves. And I'm like thinking, this isn't about me, but every house I'm like, wow, like I'm doing the same thing to myself, like I'm an idiot for all this stuff. And I think the reason why that became a dirt pile. Now, I will say this: at the end of the 5 years, eventually on my birthday, a cute old lady showed up at the house. People were running around the front yard. It was like neighbors were over hanging out, and she's walking up with a FedEx, and I'm like, "Oh, I got a package today, huh?" And she leans in and she's like, "You've been served," and I'm like, "Oh, I think we all know what this is about." So I had to take that in, go past our neighbors, go up to the house, and she was discreet, thankfully. So they didn't really know what was going on. So then, that means sheriff's sale. So they say, here's your date. You got to be out of the house. It's going to auction on and Jenny and I built this house. So it was, oh
my gosh.
And here's what was the reason why this was an amazing dirt pile is because it was so prolonged. It actually, from start to finish, ended up being a 7-year process. And when you carry that kind of weight for a long enough time, it actually changes who you are. In my case, when I got the sheriff's sale thing, I was like, hey, Henry, this looks like it's the end of the road. Like, we've tried everything, and it's, they're going to kick us out on this date, and then it's going to go to auction. And he was like, wow, what would it take to get you back into your old mortgage? And I'm like, $120,000. And he's like, well, you actually own quite a bit of stock with Southwestern. And I'm like, what? I thought I couldn't sell that unless I was leaving the company. And he's like, no, we could sell some of that stock for you. And he sent me a check for $120,000, and I walked into Bank of America, and it all went away.
Nice.
Now, the reality is a couple things. Had I known that I could access that stock, I probably would have tried to get to it, and I probably would have burned through it. So that's like kind of a thing. At first, I was like, what? God, I've been praying about this for 5 years, and it's like money solved the problem. That doesn't seem like the way this story's supposed to end. There's supposed to be some kind of miracle or devastation, one or the other, but it's not money fixed it.
Right.
I was dealing with a lot of difficult processing of that. But I will say this again, I'm watching people in their, strife, just struggling to be okay with themselves due to a financial hardship of selling a house or whatever. And I thought, how much of my personal identity actually is wrapped up into how well I'm doing financially or how badly I'm doing financially? Do I think that I'm, like when you're doing well and things are on the rise, you're Pat Roach. Everybody, it's Pat Roach. But when you're about to lose your house, am I still Pat Roach? Or am I this guy who, is like failing?
Mm.
And so you wrestle with a lot of questions around your own identity regarding your financial well-being and how does God see me versus the way I see me, whether things are good or bad or whatever. And so that was super helpful. Just the idea of being able to pay your bills is a wonderful thing. It's just like so much better. I don't need to be wealthy. And I think before, I think I felt like I really do need to. I mean, I sold books all those summers. I better turn out pretty well off for having done all that, and then you get to a point where you can feel like your, net worth was minus $300,000 and you go, just paying my bills feels really, really good. And I'm grateful to be able to do that. And I don't need that long-term wealth win to actually feel like life turned out. And that took 7 years for me to be able to get there. Because I think it's so built into it. It's so built into me and the way that I was thinking about things. So that's my dirt pile. That was
awesome.
that was a big one.
That's good. That's good. And prolonged. Mine
Yeah.
lasted a couple days. Wow, that's incredible. Andres, your hand is raised.
I have a question. How did it feel to do your first mortgage payment after all that was done?
It was conflicting. It was like, oh, so we're just back in. Like it was great to go, can't believe that's behind me, but I was stunned and confused still. Like I'm telling you, the weight of a foreclosure process. I remember being on a treadmill and thinking about maybe having to get kicked out of my house, and like getting choked up on the treadmill to the point where I'm like, I got to get out of here. Before I break down in the middle of the gym, So when you carry that and you feel like you're hiding it because nobody really knows what's up.
Right.
And then eventually you're back in and it's like nobody knew. It just kind of made me feel like I want to tell everybody what we've been through now that there's a little bit of a bow on it and it isn't quite the burden for people to hear about and carry with you. I mean, I did have a select handful of friends that were a part of the process. So it's not like I was keeping a secret from everybody. That's not the thing you go around telling your neighbors about unless you're,
Right.
Unless you have that kind of relationship with them. So I just felt like, man, I feel like now this is a thing I need to talk about. And that's what that felt like when it all went back to normal. It was like, now I'm left with this big pile of processing to do.
Yep.
Man. So by the 7th year, what year was this when it all cleared up? It was 7 years later, so in 2014?
So it was 2012, I believe, was when, and March 1st is permanently in my calendar as Mortgage Day because that is the day that we reinstated. So every year on March 1st, we celebrate, we have a mortgage, like we can pay our bills.
See that whole thing, like 2 episodes ago, we talked about like how you recheck or reflect everyone, not just on New Year's, but like that's the
there
day
you
right
go.
there.
There you go. Yeah.
Cool. Wow.
Yes.
That's good. It made me think of the Beatles song, "Boy, you got to carry that weight." Huh?
That's brutal.
That's a good story. Thank you, Pat. Well done.
Yeah.
Alecia,
Thank you.
Tell us your tale of woe.
Yeah, like I want to go right after that. I'm over here, and I've heard parts of that story, but
man,
wow, Pat, that's really extraordinary.
Drop your mic, Pat. Go ahead and drop it. It's new.
Not hard though, like gently.
All right. There it is.
Nice. Slight mic drop.
Walk out.
Gentle mic drop.
Well, it's funny when I look back, there's probably two moments that have been really pivotal, but I'll talk about the earliest one because I think it's probably the most relevant for people who, I just think that's an era of life that most people don't talk about. And when I think about a dirt pile story, I think of it as that single moment, like that one point in time, right? And I've definitely had more recently some times that were really tough. Like 2017 was a particularly heinously bad year in 5 different categories. But, I sold books for 5 summers and we had a top sales team my first summer. We were the number 1 team in the company. We broke a 30-year company record. I was a top 10 salesperson, first year dealer. Like it went well. And then second summer, not so much, but I rebounded. I kind of learned my thing. And by my 5th summer, I was field managing in Missouri. And then we went to Pennsylvania for the summer. And I kind of just broke. Like I cried every single day that summer. And later, when I got into therapy, like that therapist was able to explain to me what was going on. And I remember my boss, Jeff Hahn, he's like, Huck, I know if I asked you to figure it out, you would. He goes, but this is just not a book field thing anymore. And he was right. And so we went to a get back meeting in Tennessee that fall. And Jeff Hawley, God bless him, sits me down. And I think I might be one of the only people who's ever been fired, but like he didn't use the word fired, but he was like, you're done. I was committed to field manage for a whole nother summer. And he said, I'm going to give you a week. I want you to tell me where you're going to live and which therapist you're going to go see. And I can't believe that he could see. I mean, now I can get that he could see all that, but I was sort of like, well, okay. So moved to Colorado. I had an aunt and uncle that had sort of host familyed another cousin of mine and got a good therapist and, started rebuilding. But like to Pat's point, everybody I knew was taking a job with Legacy or, like they were doing all these cool things. Or my best friend Virgie was still a sales manager and was just killing it. And I was working at a Barnes and Noble and a Red Robin. And I was getting recruiting calls, but like it was demoralizing. Right. And it took a while, but Virgie had asked me to come down to Texas to help her with a spring production meeting because she was all by herself down there. And I said, yeah, if you'll pay for the ticket, I'll come down and help. And when I went back, it was the first time that I really felt like me. Because I was, I was probably 22, 23. And then there were like 21-year-olds that I could be a student manager. Like I knew how to do that. And I felt like me. And while I was there, Linda Schwader-Smith gave a presentation, this goal setting workshop. And I heard that she got paid $5,000 for that. And I thought, well, if she can get 5, I can get 10. Like for sure. That's not even hard, right? Totally arrogant, such a dork. And so I got this idea that I would I'd start my own business, but I didn't know how to do that. And I just wasn't ready. So I had another corporate job and it didn't go particularly well. They fired me as well. And then I took a job with Great American. If you guys remember Mike Weber back in the day, he had the Leadership Institute. And man, I thought that was my dream job. And I was wrong. Mike really wanted somebody who would do what he had done, which was to show up and just kind of go do their thing. And then later they would have a seat at the table. And I realized later I'm somebody who I want a seat at the table. That's part of my motivation for working really hard. So I'm bouncing around a lot and I don't know what I want to do with my life. And meanwhile, my friends are buying nice cars and getting cool apartments. And I'm like not doing those things. And I grew up, I mean, we were pretty poor. Like at times it was not easy. And I know what government cheese tastes like and that's all okay. But after I sold books, kind of to Pat's point, right? You just have a different set point and expectation for yourself. And it's hard to not be where you think other people are, right? Doesn't mean that's where they were. And I feel like I'm somebody who there's a certain amount of meaning. Like, I had a friend who sold cancer insurance and Rob can sell, like, it doesn't matter to Rob what he does. For him, it's about providing for his family. But for me, it was something else. And so, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And people would say, well, do what you're good at. And I'm like, well, I'm good at a lot of stuff. That's not helpful. Then they'd say, well, do what you love. And I'm like, I love all kinds of things. You are useless. This is not fun. And so finally, I got fired again from the Leadership Institute. So for all of you out there, if you just don't fit certain places and you've ever been exited, you can build a great life after that. It's not the end of the world. Sometimes it's just, I didn't have the guts to leave. So they made the call for me. Right. But I was working for a friend, managing his law firm for a few months. And I was like, okay, I'm really going to do it. I'm going to start this company. And after about 8 months, I was like, I thought I would do both, like use that job to pay my bills and start. And I was like, I'm never going to do it. So I gotta cut ties, sink or swim. That's how we're going to do it. Right. For those of you who know me, the intense choice and a very black and white one, that would be appealing to someone like me. So I said, okay, I'm just going to go for it. And that was literally the stupidest thing I could have possibly done. I had no money in savings. I had no backup plan. I had no connections. I'd never been to a networking meeting. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know how to do contracts, but I was like, I'm good at coaching. I should go do that. And so the first several years were really bad, obviously, because one, I wasn't sure what I should focus on. And people would say, oh, go do sales training. You're a good salesperson. I'm like, I don't want to teach people how to get past secretaries. Like that does not sound like a joyous life to me. So I really struggled to figure out what I should sell. I didn't know anything about how to sell it. This was 2004. So for those of you who aren't my age, you couldn't just like whip up a website and throw yourself on Instagram and go make money. Like you had to pay somebody. You couldn't even just whip up a website. There was no Squarespace. There was no site so how was I supposed to get leads and get to know people? I was at such a loss. And in retrospect, I can really see that the problems I had in my business were one of the ways that I sort of kept things that I wasn't ready to deal with from my childhood at bay. Because when you're really busy trying to pay your rent, you just don't have the capacity to think about other things. So it was a huge blessing. But at the time, I'm thinking, well, I'm awesome. How come the scoreboard says that I suck really bad? And why can't I figure this out? And I would try different things, and, I would do marketing work with people, and then I do some, and I would like wherever the money was, I would try to follow it. But I think it was probably 2010, 2011. I was in this cute little, I was in this Victorian apartment. We called it the Tree House. It was at the 3rd floor of an old Victorian building here in Denver. And so you just could see treetops everywhere. And I'm sitting in my office one day, and, along the way, there had been weddings that I couldn't go to, right? Like trips that I couldn't take because you just don't have the money. And even at times I would go out to dinner with friends and they'd be ordering appetizers and drinks, and I'd get like a cup of soup and a water. And then they'd go, okay, your share of the bill is 52. And I was like, no, hang on. I actually wasn't that hungry, and you're like, you gotta like, no, I'm driving a Ford Focus because I don't believe in spending a lot of money about cars. Like you're just, and you can't be a business consultant who's not doing well at business. You can't be that. And it's so, to Pat's point, it was lonely and it was scary and it was hard. And at that point, I'd been doing it for like 7.5 years. And there is this Tim McGraw song that happened to be on the radio. And I don't know exactly what it was that pushed me to my breaking point that day. But that song, one of the lines is, I'm tired of pretending that I don't love you anymore. And it just hit me like a bag of bricks. So I got in my car. There was this spot at Wash Park here in Denver, this big, huge, gorgeous park that we have that's always full of people. And I used to like to go down there and sit in my car in front of the lake because it was private, but it was really scenic and gorgeous. So I grabbed a notebook and a pen and I went down and I turned off my car. I rolled down the windows, turned off the car, grabbed the notebook, played that song, and just started crying because it was so hard. I mean, there were times I remember I had like $20 in my bank account and I was going to figure out, okay, how do I put gas in the car and what do I eat this? And I was like, well, I'm a book chick. I'll eat peanut butter and jelly. Like this is doable, right? Like it's a blessing to know how to survive in those moments and to not need, 24 karat everything, but it's also a curse because sometimes you're just too good at it. And I remember once I had been going to our local grocery store. I had a big jar of change that I had saved up. And I went into the local grocery store to cash it in and bumped into a friend. And he said, what are you doing today? And I was like, well, I made my calls. I'm pretty much done for the day. And he goes, you entrepreneurs, you guys are all the same. You get to have all the fun. You never have to work hard, blah, blah, blah. Like he's in a big corporate job, right, that he hates. And what he didn't realize is, no, I'm cashing in my change so I can buy groceries and gas. Like this is not a glamorous life. And, I grew up watching my mom sort of balance the checkbook to figure out what we could do that day or not. Like one time I wanted a dress, right? And it was a $50 dress and she like was crying because she just couldn't swing it that week. And my parents were insanely hard workers. So, I'm sitting in front of this lake and I just get out my notebook. And when I finally stop crying enough to start writing, I just start writing all the things that I'm tired of pretending. Like, I'm tired of pretending I have money. I'm tired of pretending I just don't want to go. I'm tired of pretending that everything's fine. I'm tired of pretending I know what I'm doing and that I don't hate this and that it's not so effing hard all the damn time. And I kind of puked it all out. And then, what do you do after that? Right. Because I had tried to go get other jobs, and in my mind, like, God kept shutting that door. And I would get some lead on, okay, it's this job and it's a perfect fit for me. And then there'd be some mysterious breakdown. My praying probably looked a little different than Pat's. I used to be in my car and I was screaming at God, if you want me to do this stupid business, send a damn check, like send a damn check, was sort of how I was praying at the time. And, and then what do you do, right? Like, do I just go get a job? Do I give up? And at this point, I had invested a lot in Maverick. And the truth is, I had done a lot of good and I loved it. And I was really good at it. And it felt like where I was supposed to be. But the weight of all that financial insecurity was just too damn much. And I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm tired of all of this. And so I made a decision that day. I was like, I'm going to give it 18 months. I'll give it 18 more months. I will give it 1 year and a half. And if I can't make it work, if it doesn't smooth out, if I don't have that baseline security, then I'm going to give it up and I'll go be a copywriter for $25,000. I didn't know what copywriters made. They make more now, I'm sure. I hope. And after that, it took a long time, but it was within a couple of years where I think I'd finally gotten healthy enough that I could start to deal with some of that stuff. And my business, I found my niche. I figured out I should work with CEOs and executive teams. And I figured out that it was working with them in fast growing companies. Like every year I would just put a little bit more of the puzzle together, and it's continued to be like that. But, 2017, I won't tell that whole story, but I got really sick. I burned through my savings. I had to move in with a friend of mine who had actually, my living space actually improved because he had such a big, gorgeous house. He was like a brother. And I just needed a place to go. And he very generously opened up his home. And so I ended up with this huge basement apartment, which was great. But it was another moment where how do you even keep going? How do you get through this? And all that ego stuff about the car that you drive and how things are really going and what you can and cannot say. And I think, I don't know what those answers are even now, but I'm grateful that I made it through and that I knew how to, especially the second time around, manage my headspace really well, right? I knew how to take care of my brain. I knew to read pages every day that would make my brain think more positively. I would take long walks in that same Wash Park and talk myself up. And I had some good friends around who would tell me their dirt pile stories and be like, you're going to make it. And, in 2017, when everything got really hit rock bottom, then I rebuilt my business and I got really, really focused on messaging and who I was going to target and all that stuff. So it got technically better. But, life can be kind of mysterious like that. And it's hard when the scoreboard says one thing to believe something else about yourself. And, but you can make it through. And I think it's hard to know what you should change and what you should keep the same and all those different questions. But
that's good.
I'm tired.
We need each other.
Yeah.
You can't go it alone. And so, I'm thinking lots of thoughts as you tell that story, but all that stuff you did while you were flailing about, I'll do this, I'll try this, that was also exposing you to all kinds of business concepts and ideas that you can use now. So in the long game, it helped you, but at the time, it sounds tough.
Yeah.
So
there were happy things along the way, right? But I think we glamorize starting your own business. It's going to be, mostly. And we think we ran our own businesses in college, but we didn't. We ran a franchise. They gave you it's just not the same thing as trying to figure out, well, what am I going to sell? And I will say this now, I mean, I just had my best year ever last year. The clients that I work with are producing insane results. It is so fulfilling to be someone who can help them get through those doors. Like I mean, it's such a ridiculous life that I lead. It's so much fun. It's so easy, but it was, and I built all that
price.
Stuff that I made up is the reason I have that life. It's crazy. Pat.
Alecia. So I also knew some of this story, and what I remember when you talk about when you heard Linda Schwager,
yeah.
When you heard her talk and you're like, she got $5,000 for that, I could definitely get 10. And then you reflected on the 20-year-old you or 22-year-old you, like, what a dork, But I would actually encourage you to reframe your interpretation of 23-year-old dork you, because I don't think it's completely as dorky as you remember it. Because I think there was a part of you that recognized, well, sure, we can recognize how ignorant the comment is because you don't know anything. But what it also showed is there was a part of you that was like, if that's worth 5,000, I can do something that's superior to that. And I know that about myself. So maybe you didn't have a business model and maybe you didn't have a plan, but you weren't wrong. And so I think you probably should forgive 23-year-old dork self to remove that title from her.
Thank you. That's really beautiful. I appreciate that, Pat.
The other thing that I'm always reminded of is that we're really good, and you did too, you're good at this, is comparing your insides with other people's outsides. Man, we're good at that because we've got so much of a maelstrom going on within ourselves, and we know how weak and all our foibles and random thoughts, but we look at other people and go, man, do they have it together? If I could just be more like Dan Moore, then my life would be, but Dan is really messed up. So I take comfort in that. I know that because we're all humans and we're all just like,
we're all really messed up. The thing I tell people sometimes is we're all just making it up. Like I've worked with people who are running hundreds of millions of dollars worth of business. Everybody's making it up. All the parents are making it up. All the kids are like, we're all making it up all the time. And I just feel really like I'm glad that 22, 23-year-old me saw that as a possibility because it's been, I mean, it's ridiculous. And I feel like in some ways I'm just getting started. So
dang, that was wild.
Yeah, I think it was St. Augustine that said his biggest discovery was 2 words, you too. I mean, that was his revelation. You too have this issue. I thought it was just me. No, that was the best thing I did when I was in my 30s was join a men's group where we had to sit and share our stories. And wow, it was completely eye-opening. And I took great comfort in the fact that that little team of guys made up of pastors and worship leaders and all kinds of business, they're all messed up. And I was like, yes, I'm free. I'm free of this. So, okay, Andres, what's your tale?
Well, no, you go ahead, Lisa.
Thanks, Alecia. No, I want to hear yours because mine's. I mean, this dirt pile. I'll
keep mine short, but mine is kind of like Pat's and kind of like Alicia's, where like I think one of the things that real life, not that the book field is not real life, but like outside of the book field, real life dirt pile stories, I think that it's there's more waves, so there's more ups and downs, and so you think you're like cresting, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, this was I psyched you out, said the universe, and then back down the hill you go. But so right after I left Southwestern the first time, I came home to find out that my parents had told the childhood home that I grew up in. My parents were instructed not to tell me any negative news during the summer, and that was my last summer. So then I was driving home, and my mom's like, hey, don't go to the house because we sold it because your dad and I are divorced. So your stuff's in the garage and like storage somewhere, that we could leave that we didn't sell. And also, neither of us can have dogs at the apartments. You're going to have to take the dog. What she didn't know is that I owed Southwestern $1,000, which at the time, when you come back from the summer and you have, like, when you owe the company money and that's all you did that summer, when you owe the company $3,000, it might as well be $500,000 because you have no money. They literally go, how much gas money do you need to get to where you're going? And you tell them, you calculate it out, you're like 500, and they're like, cool, now you only owe us 1,000. You're like, great. So anyway, so that's kind of where it started. I ended up moving to Missouri with my girlfriend, who she let me and my dog stay with her for a few months, and started going back to selling shoes like I did at the mall. Well, fast forward through that, started trying to get back on my feet. Still dealing with my parents' divorce. A lot of this has to do with my parents' divorce. I also got a letter in the mail from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln saying, hey, you failed 3 semesters in a row because you were busy full-timing instead of going to class. And so you've been kicked out of school. Good luck, bro. Also, you still owe us money. And so then that was awesome. And then I went back to Nebraska eventually, started working for this life insurance company, Primerica, which Primerica's great. But it's straight commission based. They paid for my license and I started kind of doing some stuff, but still like really not doing great. I also went back to sell books. Terrible idea. Dumbest thing I could have done, because I came back and I still owed them. I paid the company back, and then I went back and I owed the company again. It was awesome. So come back, my car everything's going good. And then this is when like things you don't even know hit the fan. Stuff like that's not even your fault. So I bought a new car because I started doing well again at Primerica, and I was like, let's go. We're starting getting back up on my feet again. And I bought a new car. Turns out by the way, when you're buying a car, fill all the forms out. There was a form that I was supposed to sign to Wells Fargo allowing them to auto draft my for my car payments. And so what I did at the time, which I thought was smart, and because I was working in a finance company, this is what I got told to do, which I did everything right for the most part, except I forgot to do a couple of signatures. So basically I had a separate bank account where I would, like, once I got paid, that's where I got paid from. And then for my expenses for like going to the movies and taking girls out on dates, I would take out money to my bank account, and that was my budget. I wouldn't ever even look at my Wells Fargo, because that's where everything, all the bills and stuff need to get paid, car payment included, insurance, everything. And so in my head, if I had $1,000 in my play account, that's what I got for the month. That's what I get to spend on. Can't go out to eat if I'm out of that money. So that was great. But what I didn't know is, and also check your mail. My younger millennials, check your mail. This is important. Really, really important. Check your mail. You're missing out on wedding invites. You're missing out on wedding invites, and you're missing out on when the bank's trying to tell you that they're going to take your car because you forgot to sign a form that they needed to have so they could pull money out of your account. So I get my brother comes home. I had just gotten broken up with, which is the worst breakup I'd ever gone with. And my brother comes home and he's like, hey, is your car broken down? I go, no. He goes, there's some guy towing your car outside. And I'm like, what? So I go outside. I go, what are you doing with my car? And he goes, well, the bank needs it back. And I'm like, what do you mean? So he leaves with my car, and I call the bank, Wells Fargo, blah, blah, blah. It's impossible to get a hold of them, by the way, trying to like all the dial 8, wait for it in line. And I had to wait. I had to get to work, whatever. Got to the phone. They told me I didn't fill out this form. And I go, hey, can you pull up my Wells Fargo account? And they're like, yeah. I was like, how much am I behind on payments? They're like $3,000. And I go, okay. Do you see how much I have in that account? And they're like, yeah. What's the balance? They're like, $4,200. I'm like, yeah, that's because you were supposed to have $3,000. You're supposed to take it out. And they're like, we didn't get the signature, blah, blah, so you never paid. And I'm like, I will give you the $3,000 right now. And I'm caught up. And they said, no, if you want to get it, you have to pay the remaining balance in the car, which is $13,000, which I did not have. And so then they took the car. So with the $3,000 I had, I had a family member who sells used cars. I bought a 3,000 used Sonic. Fast forward, I'm broke now. Like, I'm skin broke. And there's my mom is getting remarried. This is in May of like 2018. I am trying to like keep it together because I had to take extra work. I was I was Ubering with that car so I could get extra money. That's gone. So like my source of income besides Primerica is gone. I can't get to appointments because I don't have a car. It's like, and Zoom wasn't a thing. You're like, oh, what did you Zoom with your clients? Nothing. So anyway, so I'm getting to a point where like I'm running out of cash. Any savings and stuff I had, I'm like completely out, like way, way out. And I still haven't like dealt with my parents' divorce. My mom's getting remarried. She invites me to her wedding, my own mom's wedding. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to make it there. I have this like little car. I have like the tank, like the yellow light had been on I went to and from the office and it was still on. And I'm like, there's no way I have more than 3 miles before this thing runs out. And I don't even have money to go get gas. So I think this is the moment where I realized this was a new low. I had video games and a PlayStation, and there was a Walmart that was like a mile away, and like GameStop and a Walmart. And so I went and sold. I tried to sell my video games and they wouldn't take them. And I had this PlayStation, and I was like, "Hey, I need to return this," because Walmart takes returns at the time without any proof of purchase. You could do it like 3 times. I found this out. Walmart has a rule that you can return anything 3 times in a 12-month period without a receipt. I don't know if they changed it now, but at that time that was real. That's how I found out. And I went back to Walmart and I'm like, "Hey, this PlayStation, I need to return this." And then they were like, "Okay," and it was like an old PlayStation. They gave me like $40 for it because it was like you could tell it'd been used. They're like, "We're gonna give you like $40, and you get it in a Sam's Club membership card. They don't even give you cash." Why? Because I'd already used up my 3 other things trying to like return stuff, trying to live. So like I was literally out of things. So they don't give you cash at the end. They give you a Sam's Club card, and there's a Sam's Club. There's gas. So with the $40 that they gave me, I filled my car up with that card with my old PlayStation video games money, and I made it to my mom's wedding. And I was sitting there going, I have not been okay about this whole time, and it's led me to this. Like this can't happen anymore. And that luckily that weekend, my mom was like, "Oh, hey, by the way, you're this lady here that came to my wedding. She needs life insurance." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Sold her the biggest policy I had sold to at that point. She was like a pony. Luckily with Primerica, they pay you commission up front, and then hopefully they don't cancel because it's term only, so it's all good. They just pay it all up front. And within 48 hours, I had to stay home because I didn't have food or money, or I couldn't even get home because my car was like almost on empty again because I had to drive to Grand Island. And so I waited the 48 hours until the money hit my account. My mom didn't know anything. Nobody knew. I didn't tell anybody. No, my brother didn't know. Nobody knew. They're like, "Where's your car?" Like, some people hadn't seen me since the car got repoed. Oh man, what I'm thinking about it now, it's hilarious now. But yeah, that money hit the account, and I remember thinking, this is never gonna happen to me again, like ever again. I can't ever get to this point. I need to deal with my shit. Sorry for that's not about business because it's hindering me, and I'm not letting it like live. I'm not letting it exist because I don't want to admit it. And if you let it exist, it's the only way you can deal with it. And so I did that, and yeah, ever since then, I graduated. I got back into the university. I graduated from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I remember thinking when I left here, I'm like, I'm going to become either rich or famous, and they're going to ask me to come back and do like a comedy gig here, a speaking gig here, but at some point, the University of Nebraska is going to pay me to do something, and I'll be like,
commencement.
And yeah, they're going to have me come back or commencement, something. I'm going to come back here, and I'll be the other person on the other side and tell this story. And so then, yeah, but that was, I mean, there's more to it, but I could talk about this for hours, but
that's all. Yeah. I mean, it's really cool. We all have to come to the end of ourselves at some point. That's why I think a lot of people on the book field, because that's an early version of all these great stories, happens when we're in our 20s on the book field. And when you hit rock bottom, you get real open-minded to all kinds of suggestions. That's where people pray for the first time too. So hang on.
My dog is trying to bite me because he needs to go out.
Yeah.
And I'm the only one home. Hey, Deb.
Hey, Deb.
Yeah, we're all.
See you on Bisler.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I literally have to take him out.
Let's go upstairs.
Yeah. So go, Pat. Go ahead. What's up, Pat? Pat's out. Pat. Oh, he's quitting.
He had to go. Okay. He's like, this episode's
quitter.
All good stories. This all reminds me of one. It's okay, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. Holy cow. It reminds me of the first part of the book of James. You know, I'm always angling toward Bible stuff. So read that. It says this in James 1. Consider it pure joy. This is the reframe. When you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result so that you can be perfect and complete and you don't lack anything. So all the trials and tribulations and setbacks, consider them part of your journey. It's on purpose, and don't rage against the machine. You just say, okay, this is happening for a reason. God loves me. It's all, this is in my best interest in the long run, but you have to think long range. And at the time, we're just,
you might want to yell at God to send you a check every now and then. Just every now and then.
I have stories about that where I literally was doing that. This is on the book field, saying, this is what I need. And then things would happen. So we'll save that for another time. But anyway, good stories.
There was a quote that you said that reminded me. It was, life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you, regardless. Yeah. Right? And it's like, damn.
Amen.
Yeah. Don't you feel like, though, when you're at your lowest moment, I feel like I heard it described this way recently, like you have to get to the next thing that actually you feel like you can get to, right? If you set that goal too far away, you're never going to make that shot, right? Or somebody else was talking about, like, you can focus on touchdowns, but sometimes you got to focus on a first down. And like seeing things as benefit, you may not be able to do that while you're in the heart of the moment. Like in the moment, what there is to do is figure out how to get through that moment and like how to get to stability. Like, I don't think you jump from, I'm on a dirt pile that I feel so grateful in my life, or at least I've never figured out how to do that. Right. But it's knowing when to apply those lessons, I think, is really important, because whenever I've been at my lowest points, I just couldn't make the jump that high. And then because that disconnect was so big, that gap was so big, it left me feeling like I was doing it wrong. And, I wasn't thinking clearly anyway, right? So then you're guilt and shame and stupid, all this stuff. So I feel like as soon as you get to stability and some perspective, then you can see all that as a blessing. And hopefully the next time something comes down the pipe, you can get there. But I guess I'm just speaking to the people who are like at their low, like they're like, dirt pile, I'll listen to those. Like, it's okay if you can't get to grateful right now. Sometimes the best thing you can do is get through. And then later you be grateful and tell your story.
Yeah. But you have to know, at least from a spiritual perspective, you have to know that God is honing you and removing rough edges, and with all that friction and setback, there's some good at the end. You just have to know that that's going to happen. There's
have that context, I think it's incredibly powerful.
Well, if you don't have that context, then you will have a really challenging time in life. Just
even more so.
I think it's because when people tell stories like this, like we told 3 stories there in an hour. And so it's supposed to, now people who might be listening to this who are in the middle of a dirt pile might go, oh, well, it's supposed to get resolved. But it's like, no, Pat's was 7 years. Mine was like another 7. Alicia's was like another, like it's a long time before it's all okay.
Well, I think it's called life, right? Like, life is not meant to be sunshine and roses. You just keep growing your capacity to deal with the stuff that life throws at you. And you look at all our stories, right? We all could have sorted it out a lot faster if we'd been straight about how things were going with key people, or got, you know what I mean? And that just wasn't, that was the lesson to Lee's point that we needed to learn. But knowing who to talk to and where to get the right kind of help, and always dealing with whatever your inner emotional stuff is, always a smart move.
And remember, if you're managing people are behaving the best they can based on the maturity level they have at the time. So
amen to that.
That's NLP. People are always behaving the best they can based on the understanding they have at the time. So I can get mad at a 2-year-old, but hey, they're 2 years old. So
it's hard being a 2-year-old.
I know.
I'll have one in 2 years. Okay.
Yay! Congratulations.
Yay!
Finishing on a positive note.
There's finally sort of 2 girls on this show.
Lee, we need to get your dirt pile story, since the one that you were going to tell, and then we either start with that on the next episode, or I just share it like as an exclusive, like on Instagram or something.
Well, or just do a part 2 and have the like Q and Will and people that weren't on this call.
Oh, that would
dude.
be great. I would love
Good.
That's
that.
a good point. Yes,
Like
actually, that'd be
chapter
great. I
2.
want to hear Q's dirt pile must be something.
I can read his letter, just like Martin Luther King had letters from a Birmingham jail. He wrote that. I've got letters from Q from a jail. So it's
You do?
he
Lee,
wrote
do you have
you getting emotional about almost anything.
Well, he wrote me a long letter, which I've saved along with my map of Malone, and it's pretty interesting because I
do you
didn't
have
know him
multiple
that
of
well.
those?
But yeah, anyway, maybe he'll share that.
Why was he writing to you?
Unknown. That's a great question to ask him. I mean, it's not like we were best friends. I mean, I was a guy on stage. I don't know. We'll ask him.
Hold on, I'm gonna close this up, but I got a question for you after we get out of here. All right, guys, catch us on the next executive exercise episode. This has been Andres
Reptiles part 2, baby.
and we're gonna do part 2 because that was too good. All right, we'll catch
Great
you guys on
job.
the next one.
Great
I'll start
job,
playing the
guys.
music. Thank you, everyone. See you later.